My name is Hannah Porter, and I was 35 years old when an IRS compliance letter arrived at my Nashville apartment asking me to verify tax returns I had never prepared, never reviewed, and never signed, but that somehow carried my preparer ID, my professional title, and a copied version of my signature. I found the envelope on a Thursday evening after a long shift at the nonprofit financial clinic where I helped low-income families untangle refund delays, tax debt, and preparer mistakes. I remember standing in my kitchen with my coat still on, a tote bag full of client folders on my shoulder, and the little green calculator from my first volunteer tax clinic sitting on the counter beside my mail. The envelope had the IRS seal in the corner. I opened it carefully because people who work in tax do not rip government letters open like birthday cards. The first line said the agency was requesting clarification regarding multiple filed returns associated with my preparer information. I read the sentence 3 times. Then I saw the client names. Some I did not recognize at all. Some were vaguely familiar from church flyers and local parent groups. Then I saw the signature page attached to the inquiry packet, and my stomach went cold. At the bottom of one return was my name, Hannah Porter, Certified Tax Preparer. My PTIN, my copied signature. Not my current signature, but one lifted from an old clinic checklist I had used years earlier when I trained my sister Chelsea on basic intake organization, after she begged me to just help her understand the process. Before I tell you how I walked into an IRS compliance review 5 days later with software logs, client file gaps, copied signature proof, and my mentor's handwritten note in one folder, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels before I tell you what happens when a family says, help your sister, but means lend her your credibility, absorb the federal risk, and stay quiet when the letter arrives. Because the IRS letter was not the beginning. It was only the first piece of paper honest enough to say what my family had been doing for years. Chelsea was my younger sister by 3 years, and she had always been the kind of woman people described as full of ideas, which in my family meant she started things other people later had to finish. My mother Diane loved that about her. Chelsea had spark. Chelsea had drive. Chelsea had a mother's hustle. I had discipline, caution, records, and a job that involved telling people what they did not want to hear about money. My father Roy did not openly choose sides in dramatic ways, but he always found a practical-sounding reason why Chelsea needed help and I needed to stop making help so complicated. Don't turn family paperwork into a federal case, he liked to say, which became painfully ironic later. Chelsea had 3 children, a rotating list of side businesses, and the ability to turn every failure into proof that she was brave for trying. A boutique that never made profit. A party planning page that collapsed after 2 unpaid vendors. A cash envelope budgeting class she promoted online while borrowing money from our mother for gas. None of it stuck, but every attempt earned applause because she was building something for her kids. I was single. I rented a quiet duplex. I had no children. I worked with tax forms, numbers, and people who needed careful answers. In my family, that meant my life was less full, less urgent, and more available for Chelsea's next plan. I learned that role early. When Chelsea forgot permission slips, I was asked to print new ones. When she overdrew her first checking account, I helped her call the bank. When she missed a credit card payment and cried because the late fee felt unfair, I explained interest and grace periods while my mother hovered behind us saying, "Don't make her feel stupid, Hannah." That sentence followed me from childhood into adulthood like a bad inheritance. Don't make Chelsea feel stupid. Don't make Chelsea feel judged. Don't make Chelsea feel unsupported. Nobody ever said, "Don't make Hannah responsible for the cleanup." At 28, I missed a nonprofit promotion interview because Chelsea called me from her failed boutique, sobbing over payroll taxes she had ignored for months. She had classified a part-time worker wrong, missed deposits, and received a state notice she did not understand. My mother called me before Chelsea did and said, "She has more at stake than you do. She has kids." I spent 4 hours that morning helping Chelsea organize the mess, missed my interview window, and watched my mother later tell relatives how resilient Chelsea was for surviving a business setback. That was the family pattern. Chelsea made promises. Diane protected the image. Roy minimized the risk. I corrected the documents before anyone official saw the whole truth. My emotional anchor came from outside that family system. His name was Alan Brooks, and he was the first supervisor I had at a volunteer tax clinic in East Nashville. Alan was retired from a long career in public accounting, but he volunteered every tax season because he said refunds were often the difference between rent and eviction for people who had no cushion. He had a dry voice, wire rim glasses, and absolutely no patience for sloppy preparers who treated low-income clients like walking refund estimates. On my first Saturday at the clinic, he handed me a small green calculator because the one at my station kept sticking on the 7 key. "Keep this," he said. "And remember, a signature on a return is not ink. It is responsibility." I wrote that sentence in the margin of my training manual. Years later, he wrote it on a note and tucked it inside the calculator case after I became certified. That note would eventually sit on my apartment table beside the IRS letter my family tried to make me fix quietly. Alan taught me that tax work is not just math. It is trust. People hand over social security numbers, income statements, child tax information, business expenses, addresses, bank routing numbers, and sometimes the details of their hardest year. They trust you not to invent, exaggerate, inflate, or rush. They trust you not to turn their desperation into your fee. I took that seriously. Maybe too seriously for my family's taste. At the nonprofit, I helped families understand refund promises, earned income credit rules, audit letters, identity protection pins, dependency issues, and the difference between a real preparer and someone with software, a printer, and confidence. Chelsea used to mock that. "You make taxes sound like surgery," she said once. I answered, "Bad tax work can hurt a family for years." She laughed and said, "That's why people need someone friendly." Friendly was Chelsea's favorite substitute for qualified. The year everything happened, Chelsea announced she was launching Porter Refund Help from her dining room. Not a licensed firm, not a real office, not a properly structured tax preparation business. A refund support service, she called it, which was vague enough to make my shoulders tighten. She said she wanted to help working parents get what they were owed. She wanted to explain credits in plain English. She wanted to make money during tax season so she could take the kids to Disney that summer. My mother glowed with pride. "She's finally using her gift with people," Diane said at Sunday dinner. My father nodded and said, "Everybody starts somewhere." I said, "Tax preparation is not something you improvise with people's returns." Chelsea rolled her eyes. "I'm not an idiot." I did not say she was. I said she needed training, proper software access, client consent forms, document retention procedures, disclosure language, due diligence for credits, fee transparency, and a clear line between general help and paid preparation. My mother sighed dramatically. "Hannah, why do you always pour cold water on her?" My father added, "She is trying to feed her kids. Don't make family paperwork into a federal case." There was that line again. I should have heard it as a warning. I did help at first, in the narrow way I thought was safe. I gave Chelsea general resources. I explained why she could not promise refund amounts before seeing documents. I told her not to advertise maximum refunds or use emotional language around dependents. I showed her a sample intake checklist from a public IRS education packet and told her never to use my clinic materials as if they were hers. I said clearly, in writing, you may not use my PTIN, my name, my signature, my professional bio, my nonprofit role, or imply that I review or prepare your client's returns. I can answer general questions only. Chelsea replied with a thumbs up emoji. My mother replied separately, you always make helping sound like a contract. That was how she framed every boundary. Not protection. Coldness. Not clarity. Distance. The inciting humiliation came at Chelsea's tax season launch dinner in my parents' dining room. She had printed flyers with pastel green borders and a photo of her sitting at a laptop, smiling like she had discovered a cure for poverty. Porter Refund Help, helping working families keep more of what they earn. There were cupcakes with $ toppers, which I found horrifying, but nobody asked me. Chelsea's friends, a few church women, and some relatives came by. My mother made a speech before dinner. She said Chelsea was showing her children what courage looked like. She said the family had always known Chelsea was meant to build something of her own. Then she looked at me and said, and Hannah should be proud too. Her boring tax license finally helped a real mother do something meaningful. People laughed lightly because they thought it was sister teasing. My face went hot. I said, my credentials are not part of this business. Chelsea gave me that tight smile people use when they want the room to see you as difficult. Then my mother said the line that changed the air for me. You're single, Hannah. Let your tax ID help someone with an actual family to feed. A few people looked down at their plates. My father muttered, don't start. Chelsea whispered, please don't embarrass me. I looked at the flyer on the table and saw a line near the bottom I had not noticed before. Family backed by a certified tax professional. I picked it up and said, take this off. Chelsea said, it doesn't name you. It implies me. My mother snapped softly, you are so jealous of anything that celebrates your sister. I left before dessert because I knew if I raised my voice, my tone would become the crime and the flyer would become family drama. In my car, I held Alan's green calculator in my hand and heard his sentence clearly. A signature on a return is not ink. It is responsibility. The IRS letter arrived 6 weeks later. Once I saw my PTIN and copied signature, I did not call Chelsea. I audited. That is what Alan taught me. Facts first, outrage after. I pulled my preparer record. I checked my own software access logs. I verified I had not filed or transmitted anything connected to those client names. Then I reviewed the packet attached to the letter. Several returns had suspicious patterns. Inflated Schedule C expenses for tiny cash businesses with no documentation. Earned income credit claims with missing due diligence notes. Refund advance applications tied to fees higher than what Chelsea had told people. My name appeared as preparer on more than one file. My old clinic checklist signature had been copied onto consent and review pages. Chelsea had also used a shortened version of my professional bio in marketing materials, calling me a certified tax professional guiding the process. Guiding the process. That phrase made me cold because it was just soft enough to sell trust and just vague enough to dodge responsibility until a government letter arrived. Then Brianna called me. She was Chelsea's assistant, though assistant mostly meant a 24-year-old neighbor who scanned W-2s, answered texts, and scheduled clients around Chelsea's kids' school pickups. Brianna sounded terrified. Hannah, I think you need to know she used your ID in the software, she said. I thought you knew at first. Then I heard Chelsea say not to bother you unless something got flagged. She forwarded screenshots from a text thread. Chelsea, Hannah said no, but Mom says she'll fix it if IRS asks because she won't let clients get hurt. Diane, use her name for now, families trust it. Chelsea, what if she reports me? Diane, she won't. She only acts strict until people need her. I sat at my kitchen table reading those messages while the green calculator sat beside the IRS letter. There it was, my ethics as leverage. They counted on my care for clients to trap me after they had already put those clients at risk. I sent one formal non-consent statement that night to the IRS compliance office, the tax software provider, the state tax board, and my nonprofit ethics contact. I stated that I had not prepared, reviewed, filed, approved, or signed the returns in question, and that my preparer ID, professional identity, signature, and clinic materials had been used without my consent. I attached my written refusal, the copied signature comparison, my software logs, my workshop schedule proving I was elsewhere when several returns were filed, and Brianna's messages. One statement, one boundary, one green calculator on the table beside the first honest record in the whole lie. At 10:52 p.m., my mother called. She did not say hello. What did you tell the IRS? She demanded. I answered on speaker because Alan was sitting across from me by then, old and calm and more frightening in silence than most people are in anger. The truth, I said. My mother inhaled sharply. Do you understand what you are doing to your sister? Do you understand what she did to taxpayers? Chelsea grabbed the phone. You are making it sound like I stole from people. You used my preparer ID on returns I never reviewed. I was helping families get refunds. You were filing returns under my name. My father came on next, with the old line sharpened by panic. Stop turning family paperwork into a federal case. Alan looked at me over his glasses and wrote that down. My mother then said the sentence that exposed everything. Clients were promised you reviewed the returns because it made them feel safe. There it was. Not you reviewed, not you agreed. Clients were promised. Chelsea started crying. They needed help, Hannah. They needed their refunds. I thought of Mrs. Alvarez, one of the names on the inquiry packet, a low-income client whose refund delay could mean rent trouble, whose trust had been used as a sales tool. Then they needed honest filing, I said. My mother's voice hardened. Chelsea's kids depend on this business money. Then Chelsea should have built a business that did not require my identity. My father muttered, You always choose rules over family. I touched the calculator and said, Family support ends where federal liability begins. Then I gave them 72 hours. Remove my name and ID. Notify affected clients. Correct marketing. Refund any preparer fees tied to my name. Preserve the software logs. Sign a no-credential use agreement. My mother whispered, Fix it. I said, I am. Then I hung up. The smears started before sunrise. Diane posted in the family group that I was choosing federal paperwork over my sister's children. She told church friends I was jealous because Chelsea had built something from home while I only worked with poor people's forms. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Only worked with poor people's forms. As if the people I served were not families, workers, grandparents, caregivers, parents, people choosing between an audit letter and rent, people who deserved competence more than anyone because they could least afford mistakes. Chelsea posted a teary update about unexpected family betrayal during tax season and said some people could not celebrate a mother trying to provide. A few of her clients commented with prayer hands. One wrote, You helped me get way more than I expected. Don't let haters stop you. I saved everything. Alan told me, do not argue in a room with no record keeper. I nearly softened that afternoon. That is the truth, and I am not ashamed of admitting it anymore. I thought about Chelsea's children. I thought about clients whose refunds might be delayed. I thought about Mrs. Alvarez, whose name was in the packet, and whether she would blame me if the IRS froze her refund. I thought about my mother telling everyone I cared more about my clean record than people who needed money. Guilt is powerful when it borrows the faces of children and struggling families. Then I opened one of the client files Brianna had sent and saw a claimed business expense that had no receipt, no note, no explanation, just a round number large enough to change the refund. Alan saw my face. A refund inflated today can become debt tomorrow, he said. You are not protecting clients by leaving a false preparer on the file. That was the sentence that steadied me. The truth was not against those families. The truth was the only thing that could keep Chelsea's shortcuts from landing on them later with penalties and interest. The private truth room happened the next evening at my apartment table. Chelsea arrived first, looking wounded and angry, carrying a tote full of folders like paper volume could become innocence. My mother came behind her in church pearls, already crying. My father followed, irritated, like accountability was traffic. Brianna came too, pale and nervous. Alan sat beside me with the green calculator placed in front of him like a witness. On the table were the IRS letter, copied signature page, old clinic checklist, tax software logs, marketing flyer, client file gaps, Brianna's texts, the launch dinner audio, and Alan's note. Chelsea sat down and said, "You know I was just trying to help people." "Then why use my PTIN?" I asked. "Because people trust you." That was the first accidental truth. My mother jumped in. "Exactly. Families trust Hannah. That should be a blessing, not a weapon." "You made it a weapon when you used it without consent." My father sighed. "Do you hear how dramatic you sound?" Alan spoke for the first time. Federal tax liability is dramatic when misrepresented. My father looked at him. "And you are?" "The person who taught your daughter that a signature on a return is responsibility." That quieted him more effectively than any shout could have. I placed the copied signature beside the old clinic checklist. Same slant, same compressed H, same little dot of ink where the original had scanned unevenly. "This was copied," I said. Chelsea looked at my mother, not at me. That told me enough. My mother said, "Maybe you signed something and forgot." I placed the software timestamp beside my workshop schedule. This return was filed while I was teaching a community tax safety workshop across town. Brianna then slid her phone forward and opened the text thread. "Use her name for now. Families trust it." Chelsea whispered, "Brianna." Brianna's hands shook, but her voice did not. Clients were told Hannah reviewed their returns. I heard it. That was the first real shift. My family could paint me as jealous. They could not easily dismiss the assistant who had watched the sales pitch happen. Chelsea tried to pivot. "You don't understand what it's like to have 3 kids and bills and people counting on you." I looked at her for a long moment. "You don't understand what it's like to have taxpayers attached to your name, trusting that you reviewed what your signature says you reviewed." My mother snapped. "There it is. Always so cold, always so official." I picked up Alan's note and read it aloud. "A signature on a return is not ink. It is responsibility." Then I said, "My clean name was not your refund machine." Chelsea started crying harder. "Do you want me shut down?" "I want you honest." My father said, "This could have been handled inside the family." Alan answered, "The returns left the family when they were filed with the government." The room went quiet. That was the kind of plain sentence my family hated because there was no emotional fog inside it. I repeated the terms. "Remove me. notify clients, correct marketing, refund fees tied to my name, preserve logs, no use of my ID, signature, or clinic materials. My mother whispered, "Don't do this publicly." I looked at the IRS letter. It became public when my name went on returns I never touched. The IRS compliance review and nonprofit ethics meeting happened 3 days later in a plain conference room at the community tax clinic, with the IRS compliance officer attending by secure video, a software audit representative on another screen, the nonprofit director in person, Alan, Brianna, Chelsea, Diane, Roy, and me. Chelsea had been scheduled for a local, mom-owned money business feature that weekend, one of those cheerful online articles about mothers helping mothers build financial confidence. My mother had already shared the preview link with everyone in the family. She cared about that feature with a kind of hunger that embarrassed me. Public image was always the second business in my family. The compliance officer opened by saying the response had been frozen after my non-consent statement. My mother immediately said, "This is a family misunderstanding." I had expected that exact phrase. It is the favorite blanket of people trying to cover a deliberate act. Chelsea said, "Hannah helped me from the beginning, and I believed she supported the work." The officer looked at me. "Did you prepare or review the returns in question?" "No." "Did you authorize use of your preparer ID?" "No." "Did you sign the returns or consent forms attached to this inquiry?" "No." Clean questions, clean answers. The room changed before my mother could cry effectively. I placed my written refusal, software logs, copied signature comparison, old checklist, marketing flyer, Brianna's texts, and workshop schedule in a neat row. Alan explained preparer responsibility, due diligence, and why clients relying on a named preparer deserve actual review, not a family implication. The software audit representative confirmed that login activity tied to Chelsea's location did not match my device history or clinic activity. Chelsea tried to say she had used family guidance. The IRS officer replied, "Family guidance is not preparer authorization." The nonprofit director, who had always been gentle, looked personally wounded when she saw that my nonprofit role had been used in Chelsea's flyer. "This could damage trust with the very taxpayers we serve," she said. That landed harder than I expected. My mother muttered, "Everyone is acting like Chelsea is a criminal." Brianna spoke then. Clients were told Hannah had reviewed their returns because Chelsea said it made people less nervous about paying the fee. The room shifted again. The issue was no longer sister drama. It was client trust. The face slap-proof moment came when Chelsea claimed I verbally agreed during the launch dinner. I played the audio from that night, recorded accidentally because I had been capturing my mother's toast from my father, before everything turned sour. My mother's voice came through. "You're single, Hannah. Let your tax ID help someone with an actual family to feed." Then my voice. "My credentials are not part of this business." Nobody spoke. My refusal had been there from the beginning. Public, audible, ignored. Then I placed the time-stamped filing log beside my workshop attendance record, proving one return had been filed while I was teaching a tax safety workshop about refund scams. The compliance officer asked Chelsea directly, "Were you aware Hannah Porter had not consented to being listed as preparer?" Chelsea looked at my mother, then down at the table. "I thought she would help if there was a problem." There it was, the entire family system in one sentence. Use me first. Count on my conscience after harm appears. Consequences arrived in calm, official language, which somehow made them heavier than shouting. The IRS removed me as disputed preparer for the flagged returns, pending correction and documentation. The software provider suspended Chelsea's account for review and preserved the logs. The state tax board opened an inquiry into unauthorized preparer representation. Affected clients had to be notified that I had not prepared or reviewed their returns. Any preparer fees tied to my name or implied oversight had to be reviewed and, where appropriate, refunded. The nonprofit documented the misuse of my role and confirmed my standing because I had reported promptly and provided proof. Chelsea's local feature was canceled when the writer learned there was an active compliance issue. My mother cried in the parking lot afterward and said, "You ruined your sister's chance." I looked through the glass at Chelsea signing acknowledgement forms. "No," I said. "I stopped her from selling trust she did not earn." My father said, "You could have helped her fix it quietly," I answered. Quiet is how clients got lied to. That was the last thing I said to him that day. The fallout was loud at first. Diane told relatives I chose the IRS over family. Chelsea posted nothing for a week, then wrote about learning hard lessons in business. Some clients were angry, some at Chelsea, some at me, because when people expect a refund and then hear the word review, they do not always know where to put their fear. Mrs. Alvarez, the client whose name had appeared in the first letter, came to the nonprofit 2 weeks later with her daughter. Her refund was delayed because the file needed correction. I expected anger. Instead, she handed me a folder and said, "I wish someone had told me before I signed that paper." That sentence hurt. Then it clarified everything. The people my sister claimed to help had not been helped by false confidence. They had been sold risk in friendly language. Chelsea's business did not collapse overnight, but it stopped being what she had pretended it was. She had to notify clients, correct files, return certain fees, and stop advertising any connection to me. She lost the software account for the season. She lost the cheerful feature. She lost some clients. Not all. Some people still believe she meant well, which was probably true in the shallowest sense. But meaning well does not satisfy due diligence. Meaning well does not sign a return. Meaning well does not protect a taxpayer when an audit letter arrives 2 years later. My mother remained furious, mostly because she could not control the story anymore. Once letters, logs, and clients entered the room, her strongest skill became useless. She could not cry federal records into changing. Alan and I built the Green Calculator Tax Safety Guide later that year through the nonprofit clinic. At first, I resisted the idea. I did not want my family betrayal turned into a brand. Alan listened, then said, "Then do not teach betrayal. Teach verification." So we did. The guide explained how to verify a tax preparer, what a PTIN means, why clients should receive copies of returns, how to spot inflated refund promises, what due diligence looks like, how to read an IRS letter, why "my cousin knows taxes" is not enough, and how preparers can protect their own IDs from family pressure. We added sample scripts. You may not use my PTIN. I will not be listed as preparer on returns I did not review. General advice is not filing authorization. A big refund promise is not proof of skill. The first line of the guide was Alan's sentence. A signature on a return is not ink. It is responsibility. The second was mine. A tax preparer ID is not a family favor. At the first workshop, I placed the green calculator on the table. A man asked why we used an old calculator when everyone had phones. I said, "Because trust should be simple enough to check." People wrote that down. A single mother asked how to know whether her preparer actually filed what she reviewed. A college student asked if his uncle could use his software login just to help friends. An older woman whispered after the session that her daughter had been using her identity PIN because family shares everything. We helped her make a plan. That was the real redemption. Not Chelsea's embarrassment. Not my mother losing her bragging rights. The real redemption was turning one copied signature into a tool that helped people keep their names, refunds, and records from becoming someone else's hustle. Chelsea and I are not close now. We are polite in the way sisters become polite when truth has done too much work for pretending to return. Her children still hug me at holidays. I still love them. That matters because my mother tried hard to make the story about whether I supported Chelsea's kids. But children are exactly why honest tax work matters. Their rent, food, school shoes, and stability should not be tied to inflated filings and borrowed credentials that can become debt later. Protecting taxpayers was not anti-family. It was the first honest family value in the whole mess. I still keep the green calculator in my desk drawer at the nonprofit, with Alan's note folded behind it. Sometimes before a tax safety workshop, I take it out and press the old keys, even though I no longer need it to calculate anything. I remember the launch dinner, my mother's voice, Chelsea's tears, the IRS letter, Brianna's shaking hands, the compliance officer's clean questions, and the moment my sister finally admitted she thought I would help if there was a problem. That sentence taught me more about my family than years of arguments ever had. They did not think I agreed. They thought I would absorb. A family that calls your boundaries selfish while hiding federal risk under your signature does not want help. It wants credibility without consent. My clean name was not her refund machine. My nonprofit work was not her marketing language. My signature was not decoration. If your family used your professional identity to reassure people who could not afford to be misled, would you still call that support? And if the little green calculator that once helped you serve families honestly became the symbol of protecting taxpayers from borrowed trust, would you put it away to keep the peace? Or would you place it on the table and make every false promise add up exactly?